all these moments culminating in people spending more time talking about this or watching this than they are, climate change, Ukraine, monkeypox, the pandemic, any of that kind of stuff, which is why it's been such a big focal point. The problem being now, and one of the reasons why I'm, choosing to succumb to the will, is that it has also galvanized so much of the anger and resentment that a lot of people on the internet happen to have towards women. And even if Amber Heard, in this case, happens to be someone who lied, who's an abuser, and all of that, it's galvanized the ability to openly talk about this stuff in a very, very violent manner. Now, I know it's been viewing gold for people on Twitch to cover live the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. It has had a lot of emotions running high. There's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of controversy surrounding this issue. One of the reasons I've been avoiding it is because I've actually just avoided the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case from its beginning. Because really, I'm not a huge TMZ guy. I just mean in my personal life. I don't like, the happenings and the goings of celebrities. If someone's like, hey, by the way, did you know this happened? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, sometimes I'll be thrust into it because it becomes part of the culture war. There's that aspect of it. But this is something that has evolved over time. Initially being something in which most people seem to have been on board years ago with the idea that Johnny Depp was an abusive husband and that Amber Heard had effectively made it known, became one of the key voices during the MeToo era, writing an article about it, about how her voice was silenced. And now there is a situation in which more evidence is coming to light. Rather than simply accept what occurred, Johnny Depp has again pursued defamation, a defamation case originally in the UK. And now there's the one that is taking place here in order to restore his reputation. You could make an argument that his reputation was legally damaged by this. He lost roles. He is no longer in the Fantastic Beasts series. That's a win, in my opinion. I would have just taken that as like, oh, thank God, I'm out of that contract. But at either rate, this has become a focal point for a lot of online hatred towards women. That's what is happening right now online. You are seeing posts of incredible misogyny and sexism towards Amber Heard as a focal point. Now, I'm not saying in this case, and we're going to look at some of the facts right now laid out by Legal Eagle, I'm not saying that there isn't a situation in which both parties have been abusing each other. Which seems to be what most of the evidence that's coming to light right now is pointing out. I think there's a big difference between saying that this is a situation in which both parties are either abusive, both parties are either terrible, both parties are doing that, and then using this as a jump-off point to say, I told you ladies be lying. I told you. Now, if this is a case in which Amber Heard effectively has lied, both about Johnny Depp abusing her and about her not being an abuser herself, then yes, that is terrible. That is something that needs to be addressed. That is something that needs to be called out. You are contributing, broadly speaking, to a situation which will make more people feel unsafe because the backlash to that happens to be a whole bunch of people now, especially those in the red pill or the MGTOW communities, being like, we told you. Gone Girl. Have you seen Gone Girl? She's a literal Gone Girl. Okay, this is what women do. All right, women they'll lie, they'll lie and they'll trick you, and then everyone thinks that men are bad, but men are not bad, and they're all liars. And overwhelmingly, when you look at the statistics, it turns out that the majority of people who do report sexual abuse are in fact telling the truth, and people who lie about it also contribute negatively towards the culture itself. There are people who do. I'm not saying there aren't. It does happen, and this may be the most high-profile version of this happening ever.
Defamation dispute like this, the internet has all kinds of opinions, but they've been completely silent about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It's weird. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard. She is suing him at exactly the same time. This is all incredibly crazy. And this latest suit and countersuit is already turning into a circus. Of course, for Hollywood celebrities leading public lives, it seems like there's no such thing as a truly private matter. And this has certainly been the case for Amber Heard, who has publicly accused her ex-husband Johnny Depp of subjecting her to years of physical and emotional abuse during their marriage. And Depp, for his part, has vehemently denied the allegations, accusing Heard of defaming him with fabricated claims while portraying Heard as the real abuser. And while Heard has primarily aired her grievances to the media, Depp has opted to take his fight to the courtroom in both the UK and the state of Virginia. Now, determining the truth of domestic violence allegations is invariably a challenging prospect. As a result, the public's response to these allegations has been incredibly polarizing, with Heard and Depp having their own supporters and detractors alike. So, Legal Eagles, let's talk about the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard saga. We'll cover the facts leading up to the decades-long dispute between the former celebrity couple, review the multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuits in the UK and the US that have been brought as a result, and talk about how Johnny Depp can sue twice for basically the same thing. Now, the former Hollywood couple's Virginia courtroom confrontation is the culmination of 10 years of love, heartbreak, and abuse allegations between the Pirates of the Caribbean actor and the Justice League actress. Here is the timeline of how this feud leapt from the tabloids to the courtroom. Now, in 2012, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard began dating following Depp's split.
It's also been just like content gold for the Quarterine. This is like the best thing to ever happen to the Quarterine's career since like The Last Jedi came out. It's just like he can make infinite videos about this, how I told you, women be lying. I told you. And then all the people who are like super misogynistic in his audience can be like, oh shit, yeah, another video, let's watch about it. Let's see.
From his longtime partner, French model, actress, singer Vanessa Paradis. Depp and Paradis dated for 14 years and they shared 2 children together. In February of 2015, Depp and Heard officially tied the knot, but as quickly as the pair fell in love, things fell apart just as swiftly. On May 21st, 2016, the LAPD responded to a Saturday night call in which Heard alleged domestic abuse. Law enforcement officials at the time stated they found, quote, no evidence.
Yeah, I was going to play
Nick
Lesko's song.
Heard did not file any charges. On May 23rd, 2016, Heard officially filed for divorce from Depp, citing irreconcilable differences.
Because people love a train crash. Yeah, so this combines so many things, right? We have one of the largest celebrities in human history, Johnny Depp, who's been in so many massive franchises, used to be an A-list actor. Very, very high-profile case, a case in which they are both talking about very personal things about their lives. You now know a huge amount of personal activity that happened in both of these celebrities' lives, the drugs they were using, video footage of them, abusing each other, secret recorded phone calls of them. So all of that, of course, is just TMZ. It's a combination of some of the most potentially addictive and numbers-wise, huge content farms for not tons and tons of people. But the story itself has a lot of bizarre twists and turns. It goes all over the place. It features someone shitting in a bed, like wild things like that. It features a mega chalice of wine or whatever that thing was. So there's a lot of viral moments. Oh, and by the way, no, Amber Heard is not doing cocaine live in the courtroom. What the fuck are you all talking? Do you know how powder works? Powdered drugs? Do you think powdered drugs can just be lined inside handkerchiefs and then you pull them out and then you wipe your tears while you're crying and then you can also go for a little snoot in the middle of it? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyways, all these moments culminating in people spending more time talking about this or watching this than they are, climate change, Ukraine, monkeypox, the pandemic, any of that kind of stuff, which is why it's been such a big focal point. The problem being now, and one of the reasons why I'm, choosing to succumb to the will, is that it has also galvanized so much of the anger and resentment that a lot of people on the internet happen to have towards women. And even if Amber Heard, in this case, happens to be someone who lied, who's an abuser, and all of that, it's galvanized the ability to openly talk about this stuff in a very, very violent manner, is probably the best way of putting it. Like, I don't see an overwhelming amount of pictures of Johnny Depp with his face on a toilet and someone's cut a hole out so they can shit into his mouth, and then like everyone else laughing and liking and putting clicks up about that,
4 days later, Heard appeared in a Los Angeles court with a bruised cheek to request a temporary restraining order against Depp. In a sworn declaration, Heard alleged that her then husband, 23 years her senior, had, quote, violently attacked her and thrown a cell phone at her face with extreme force. Photographs submitted to the court show Heard with a large bruise on her face, along with broken bottles, picture frames, and shattered glass on the floor. Heard alleges that, quote, during the entirety of our relationship, Johnny had has been verbally and physically abusive, end quote. Heard further claimed that she, quote, endured excessive emotional, verbal, and physical abuse, which has included angry, hostile, humiliating, and threatening assaults to me whenever I questioned his authority or disagreed with him. Now, in her filings, Heard recounted an alleged April 21st assault wherein Depp allegedly came home drunk as Heard's birthday party was ending, threw a champagne bottle at a wall, grabbed her hair, violently shoved her to the floor, and Heard also alluded to, quote, one severe incident in December 2015 when I truly feared for my life. People magazine would later publish a photo purportedly from this incident. In opposition to these motions, Depp's lawyers claimed the allegations were false and accused Heard of, quote, attempting to secure a premature financial resolution by alleging abuse. On May 27th of that year, the judge granted Heard's temporary restraining order, ordering Depp to stay at least 100 yards away and avoid.
I think that domestic violence against men, while less, is also underreported. Absolutely. Underreported, and also because of this really shitty toxic masculinity kind of situation that we have. And I tell people this all the time. Patriarchy harms men in more ways than one. They're afraid to come out and talk about it. Sexual abuse of men, very, very scared to come out and talk about it, because it's just like, well, this makes me look like less of a man, so I'm not even going to bring it up or tell the police that I was sexually abused. I'm physically abused by my wife. Well, everyone's going to laugh at me at work if I tell them about how I can't stand up to a woman who's like half my weight, so blah, blah, blah. I think those are issues that should be brought up. They are issues that should be talked about.
All contact until a June 17th follow-up hearing that would decide whether the order should be made permanent. But hours before the scheduled hearing, Heard and Depp released a joint statement announcing that they had resolved their dispute. Quote, our relationship was intensely passionate and at times volatile, but always bound by love. Neither party has made false accusations for financial gain. There was never any intent of physical or emotional harm. Now, in August of 2016, Depp and Heard reached a divorce settlement, with Heard allegedly pledging to donate $7 million to the American Civil Liberties Union and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. In August of 2021, a New York judge partially granted Depp's motion to force the ACLU to produce documents to show if she did in fact donate the $7 million, a fact that remains contested by Depp. And after the divorce was finalized in January of 2017, Depp's attorney Laura Wasser released the following statement, quote, we're pleased to put this unpleasant chapter in Mr. Depp and his family's...
Gay partners have domestic abuse violence. That's something that's never talked about. There is huge problems of people within the gay community using Grindr, going for a meetup and then being sexually assaulted. There is a lot of sexual assault of gay men by other men. And once again, it's not something that's often discussed. It's never part of the conversation. It's often overlooked.
Lives behind them, having his request for entry of the dissolution of judgment granted today made it a particularly lucky Friday the 13th. Now, while Depp's attorneys declared their client's intention to put this chapter behind him, the British tabloids would not extend Mr. Depp such a courtesy. Which takes us to how the UK lawsuit got filed. Now, following the divorce, both Heard and Depp continued to pursue their respective acting careers. Heard reprised her role as Mara from Aquaman for Joss Whedon's Justice League in 2017, while Depp returned as Captain Jack Sparrow for the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean installment. But as Depp was preparing to reprise his role as the eponymous villain in J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, The Sun, a British tabloid, fired a shot across the pond by rehashing Heard's abuse allegations. On April 27, 2018, the Sun executive editor Dan Wooten published an article entitled Gone Potty, How Can J.K. Rowling Be Genuinely Happy Casting Wife-Beater Johnny Depp in the new Fantastic Beast film? Writing that, quote, overwhelming
I know he's not going to address this, but like, okay, J.K. Rowling.
Evidence was filed to show Johnny Depp engaged in domestic violence against his
wife. By the way, so I haven't seen the whole movie. If it changes later on, I only watched the first like 5 minutes of that new Harry Potter movie because I wanted to see the opening scene, because apparently it's the one in which Dumbledore expresses how he's gay. When he meets the character that used to be played by Johnny Depp, and and he's like, you know, Dumbledore's like, I can no longer support what you're doing, which is basically to be like the genocide of humanity. He's like, I can no longer support it. And he's like, well, you were fine supporting it before. He's like, I didn't support it. I loved you. And I was like, this is the big moment. This is the big nod where it's like, hey, but by the way, we have a gay character. It's that you were fine with these super evil, devious plans because you were in love with another man. That's how the whole thing is being spun. Oh my.
Amber Heard.
Progress.
Wooten accused the Harry Potter author of, quote, providing Depp total rehabilitation in the eyes of the movie industry by allowing Depp to star in the Fantastic Beasts sequel. Now, Depp's response to the article was swift. On June 1st, 2018, Depp sued the parent company that publishes The Sun in England for libel, demanding a minimum of $200,000 plus legal fees. Depp's attorneys argued the article defamed him by presuming the actor was guilty of domestic violence against his former wife, highlighting the use of the term wife-beater. Now, Depp's counsel maintained that these, quote, reputation-destroying and career-ending allegations were untrue and caused the actor, quote, serious harm, the threshold standard for defamation in England. In its defense, The Sun's parent company argued that there was sufficient evidence to show that Depp was, quote, violent towards Miss Heard on multiple occasions during their relationship, making the term wife-beater an accurate statement. And in support of its claims, the company relied on 14 alleged incidents of physical abuse against Heard that purportedly occurred between 2013 and 2016. Though neither Depp nor Heard were on trial, the case was essentially a dress rehearsal for the pair's Virginia defamation trial, with both Depp and Heard giving live testimony detailing an array of graphic allegations. When Depp took the stand, he acknowledged wide-ranging drug problems, which he referred to as, quote, the monster. But Depp accused Heard of making up allegations and insisting that he was, quote, not a violent person, especially with a woman, a characterization that was backed up in sworn statements from former partners Winona Ryder and Vanessa Paradis. Depp portrayed Heard as the aggressor in the relationship, accusing her of repeatedly belittling him and frequently turning physically violent during their tumultuous marriage, saying, quote, it was sort of a rapid-fire, sort of endless parade of insults. Quote, you know, looking at me like I was a fool and I was having difficulty.
I also want to bring up, by the way, speaking of this, is that it is also often overlooked because we were talking about how it's very difficult for men to process or, deal under the current, system that we have, patriarchy, toxic masculinity, however you want to identify it, about domestic abuse going towards them. I had a girlfriend when I was in Japan who, and it only happened one time because I wouldn't tolerate it a second time, I never saw her again, who threw a beer bottle at my feet and smashed it on the ground, and this was outdoors. And it was the first time something like that had ever happened to me. Don't worry, I'm completely fine. This is not like I'm really having trouble processing this. But I remember thinking at that moment, like, your natural reaction to having things thrown at you or to being hit or to being attacked, of course, is to defend yourself. Like, that's what most people, like, the few fights I've been in my life, right? If someone is throwing a punch at you, you're like, oh my God, you're going to defend yourself and like strike back. So there's certainly something to be said that if you are in a relationship with a partner who is frequently doing things that are aggressive, that are like throwing plates at you, bottles at you, hitting you, then your best course of action is to leave that relationship immediately. And if they have seriously abused you, report it on top of everything.
In my mind, of course, and in my heart, dealing with that sort of barrage. Depp further alleged that Heard would sometimes strike out in anger or frustration. And regarding an alleged headbutting incident in December of 2015 at his LA penthouse, Depp testified he was trying to hold Heard back from hitting him, and their foreheads collided by accident. Depp also detailed a purported March 2015 argument in Australia that led to part of his finger being sliced off due to a thrown vodka bottle. Depp contended that Heard saw him drinking for the first time in a while, and she threw a bottle of vodka that narrowly missed his head before throwing a larger bottle that did strike his head. Photos provided by Depp's counsel purported to show Depp with a bloody finger and a cigarette burn on his face. For her part, Heard denied injuring Depp, contending that her ex severed his own finger during a drug and alcohol binge after repeatedly smashing a wall-mounted phone against the wall. Heard testified that Depp, fueled by drugs and alcohol, hit, slapped, and shoved Heard, pulling her hair, and threw bottles, quote, like grenades at Heard at various incidents between 2013 and 2016. On cross-examination, Heard denied the characterization of Depp's lawyers that she was the one who struggled with drugs and alcohol, that she was the one who abused him, and that she was the one who was controllingly manipulative, not Depp. Now, under cross-examination, Depp admitted it was possible that he destroyed the phone, stating, quote, I remember ripping the phone off the wall. Depp also admitted that he had previously taken responsibility for severing his finger, though Depp claimed that he was only trying to protect Heard when he had to tell the production company the injury prevented him from working on set. And Depp also confirmed that he wrote messages for Heard in blood, paint, and lipstick, including, quote, I love you, and, quote, good luck, which he did to indicate he felt the relationship was over. And in a trial that had the couple airing out their dirty laundry, Depp also detailed an alleged incident involving literal dirty laundry. Supposedly on the night of Heard's birthday.
Like, this is all awful, but I still have a hard time caring about this. Yeah, if it hadn't become just the centerpiece of the culture wars, then I would be with you. It's unfortunate that it's now just becoming this like lightning rod, and people are choosing teams, and it's like you've got to vilify Amber Heard to the point that you think that all women, just as a collective, are all liars and all abusers, or you have to reinforce the idea that Johnny Depp was 100% the abuser in this case, and men can experience abuse themselves. So it's
birthday party in April 2016. Depp says he arrived late due to a meeting he was attending. Depp testified that Heard was furious with him, hitting him multiple times.
Because otherwise,
after the party ended.
I mean, what does this, like I said, I think a month ago when people were like, what are your thoughts on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard? I was like, it sounds like two horrible people who are both super rich millionaire celebrities. And that's pretty much my read on this. They both sound fucking awful. They both sound like they're prone to violence, substance abuse, and striking at each other as a result.
Before he left and spent the night at another home. Depp said that he planned to retrieve items the next morning after Heard left for Coachella, but was told by someone at the home who texted him a photo not to return because there was poop in the bed. Quote, it was a photograph of the bed, our bed, and on my side of the bed.
Okay, this is the only funny part of the entire story. And by the way, obviously, do not do this. I'm not endorsing this behavior in any way, shape, or form. Don't leave little messages in fecal matter for your partners to go find.
It was human fecal matter, so I understood why it wasn't a good time to go down there. He continued,
If you were wondering why hashtag #MePoo was trending for so long, this is why. This is the reason. This is the whole, yeah.
The response to that was, I laughed. It was so outside, it was so bizarre, and so grotesque that I could only laugh. Depp had previously claimed in a written statement that Heard or one of her friends were the culprit and alleged that Heard had called this, quote, just a harmless prank. But Depp said that incident was when he knew their marriage was over, and a month later, Heard filed for divorce.
I mean, that's one way. There's certainly, there's the traditional way of actually presenting divorce papers, or there's other methods. I mean, if this is actually the way that it happened, that's a pretty strong signal, definitely.
Heard has denied any role in this whodunit, suggesting the story is fabricated simply to humiliate her. So yeah, the British trial was incredibly colorful. And after hearing all of the evidence, the UK court sided with the Sun and rejected Depp's libel claims. In his November 2020 opinion, Justice Andrew Nichol concluded that the Sun had met its burden of proof and that the Sun's allegations that Depp engaged in unprovoked attacks and violent conduct against his then wife that caused her to be in fear for her life were true, quote, on the balance of the probabilities, meaning the abuse allegations were more likely than not to be true. The justice did not accept Depp's characterization of Heard as a gold digger who had, quote, constructed a hoax and as an insurance policy in the event the marriage fell apart. Among the incidents the judge found to be substantially true were the two events alluded to in Heard's 2016 application for domestic violence restraining order, the May 2016 assault with Depp's phone, and the severe December 2015 incident where Depp allegedly threw a decanter at Heard in the penthouse, headbutted her, and pulled large chunks of hair from her scalp before an appearance on James Corden's Late Late Show. And the justice did not find Depp's claim that Heard was responsible for severing his fingertip to be credible. And as for the poop in the bed incident, well, the judge blamed the dog. Quote, for what it's worth, I consider it unlikely that Miss Heard or one of her friends was responsible, reasoning in part that Depp was out of the house at the time of the incident and Heard was the one likely to suffer from the effects. The judge concluded, quote, it was therefore a singularly ineffective means for Miss Heard or one of her friends to get back at Mr. Depp. Your mileage may vary on that reasoning. In response to the ruling, Depp's representative stated they found the decision, quote, as perverse as it is bewildering, and immediately announced their intention to appeal. But in March of 2021, Depp's appeal was rejected, and the Court of Appeals ruled that the lower court case was, quote, full and fair, and the trial judge's conclusions, quote, have not been shown to even arguably be vitiated by any error or approach of mistake of law, and concluded the appeal has no real prospect of success, and that there is no other compelling reason for it to be heard. On appeal, Depp's counsel had argued they did not get a fair hearing and that Heard was an unreliable witness. And as evidence of her unreliability, Depp's counsel asserted that Heard has not kept her promise to donate her $7 million divorce settlement to charity. And the fallout from Depp's spectacular defeat was immediate.
Which, by the way, if true, that is actually a major thing in the story that should be remarked upon.
Following the November ruling, Depp announced he was leaving the Fantastic Beasts franchise after Warner Brothers requested his resignation. And that takes us to the good old US of A, because what makes Depp's defeat so notable is that the odds of prevailing on a libel claim are much higher in England than in the US. In England, the party accused of defamation has the burden of proving that their claim is, quote, substantially true. Now, that's the opposite in the US, where the defamed person has the burden of proving that the libelous statements are false. Another reason US defamation cases are hard to win is that public figures like Depp must prove the defamatory statements were made with actual malice, meaning that they were published with knowledge of being false or reckless disregard for their truth or falsity. Again, actual malice has nothing to do with not liking a person. It is an evidentiary standard, and it's not particularly well named. It's a legal term of art. And even with these built-in advantages, Depp still lost twice in the UK. In the face of Depp's double defeat, some have characterized Depp's legal strategy as a complete flop. And remember, not only have two British courts found Heard's abuse allegations to be substantially true, but Depp's efforts have had the unintended Streisand effect of amplifying these allegations. After all, if not for Depp's multiple lawsuits, there would be no reason for this channel to make a video on this controversy to the millions of Legal Eagle subscribers.
Or the majority of the internet right now talking about it nonstop.
Case of life
It's happening to me right now, live.
Imitating art, I guess. But Depp's defenders insist that the British trial was not fairly decided, that new evidence has since come forward that paints a different picture, particularly with new audio that purports to show Heard admitting to abusing Depp. So after all of this, we find ourselves back on American soil as Depp attempts another bite at the defamation apple, hoping this time he will be vindicated. And particularly at issue in the American trial is an op-ed that Amber Heard published on December 18, 2018, 6 months after Depp filed the UK libel action, where she published in the Washington Post an article.
Noam Chomsky, thank you, appreciate it.
Entitled, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. Heard wrote, quote, "Like many women, I had been harassed and sexually assaulted by the time I was of college age, but I kept quiet. I did not expect filing complaints to bring justice, and I didn't see myself as a victim. Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out." And in March 2019, Depp responded to the op-ed by filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit against his ex-wife, contending Heard's article contained, quote, "categorically and demonstrably false claims of domestic abuse." Quote, "The op-ed depended on the central premise that Miss Heard was a domestic abuse victim and that Mr. Depp perpetrated domestic violence against her." Depp's lawyers also wrote in the complaint, quote, "Her allegations are part of an elaborate hoax to generate positive publicity for Miss Heard and advance her career." The complaint, which again are just allegations from one side, charged that Heard had incalculably damaged the actor's reputation and derailed his career, highlighting that Disney fired Depp from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise 4 days after the publication of Heard's article. And though the article does not mention Depp by name, a party alleging defamation need not be specifically named so long as there are enough identifying facts the person reading it would reasonably understand that the statements refer to the plaintiff. And in August of 2020, Heard countersued for $100 million, arguing that Depp's denial of the abuse effectively accused Heard of committing perjury to obtain the 2016 domestic violence restraining order, which defamed her character. Heard also accused Depp of orchestrating an online smear campaign against Heard in violation of Virginia's laws against online harassment. Now, some of you might be wondering why this case is going to trial at all, given that it appears to have already been litigated in another forum in the UK. And there is a principle of law that prevents relitigation of the same cause of action in a second lawsuit between the same parties. It's called claim preclusion, also referred to as res judicata, which is Latin for a matter decided. Basically, it's like double jeopardy, but for civil suits. And there's also issue preclusion, or collateral estoppel, preventing a party from relitigating an issue once a court hits.
By the way, I do appreciate someone like Legal Eagle's analysis on this entire thing, because it seems like he's just trying to refer it distinctly to bare facts, right? Like, we're just going to talk about this, we're going to talk about how this works, we're going to talk about how the burden of proof in the UK is the complete opposite of how it is in the United States. Here are the alleged, pieces of evidence in question, rather than the entirety of being like, well, obviously Johnny Depp is a serial abuser, or obviously Amber Heard is Gone Girl.
Is already ruled on it. Now, Heard's lawyers tried to get the US lawsuit thrown out because of some of the claims that were already decided in the UK, but the judge denied the motion. Like most things in law, there were arguments on both sides of these issues. And in particular, Amber Heard was not a defendant in the UK case. She was only a witness. Depp was a party though, and he appealed his case to the highest court in the UK and lost. But because Heard wasn't a party in the UK case, remember Depp sued The Sun and the Sun's parent company, and a few other reasons, Amber Heard was not able to benefit from claim preclusion and res judicata to prevent Depp from being able to sue in Virginia. And then also, American courts reject foreign judgments that don't live up to American standards of free speech. And there's a law, the Securing the Protection of Our Enduring and Established Constitutional Heritage Act, prevents US courts from enforcing foreign defamation judgments that don't comport with First Amendment protections. So even if Depp had won his case and then asked American courts to recognize the judgment, the court probably would have rejected his lawsuit. Of course, now Depp has a second bite at the apple, and if he wins, it would be really unusual given his loss in a country with a lower standard for proving defamation. But either way, it's entirely possible that Johnny Depp's career is over, and the jury is out whether that's Amber Heard's fault or not. But the point may not be about winning a legal victory, but about winning a PR victory and rehabilitating Depp's image. And it seems like he's made some progress in that respect. Though the Virginia trial has already turned into a complete circus, I'll have to do another video summarizing all the craziness that has already occurred, including Heard's lawyer objecting to himself and Johnny Depp becoming an expert on hearsay. But if Johnny Depp wins either legally or in the court of public opinion, he should celebrate by making himself a nice meal, which he can do with today's sponsor, HelloFresh.
I don't know if the next one's here because the trial's still
ongoing,
Legal Eagles,
right? I think the legal system...
That's just a good, yeah, so that's just a good summary of everything. So I'm sure everyone here, because I don't have to replay clips, is pretty self-aware because it's being amplified on social media so much right now. I'm sure you're all self-aware of what the big revelations have been so far. There's been recorded audio that shows that Amber has said that she has hit Johnny Depp in the past. There's, of course, the viral moments, the hearsay stuff he's talking about. The mega wine glass is pretty notable, as well as the fact that multiple people have come forward and said that Johnny Depp has absolutely no history of abuse, multiple other partners. So what is, I think, happening in the court of public opinion right now, and why this is kind of becoming a Gamergate-like scenario, is that it is appearing more and more through evidence that is coming out. And the makeup evidence as well, stating that she used makeup to cover up her scars that didn't exist at the time of her statement, things like this. What is coming out now in the court of public opinion is that it's less that it was a one-sided thing and that it was simply Johnny Depp was an abuser, and an intoxicated abuser at that, and that it seems Amber Heard is also an abuser in this case, in which, like, the original assertion, if you thought this a while ago, that they just sound to be two shitty celebrities, may be true. Now, that's being amplified and used online by a lot of people who usually dedicate their lives to talking about the oppression of men, the red pill community, the MGTOW community, which I genuinely do not believe aid in men's liberation at all. I think using misogyny, sexism, in order to try and convey a point that women are all duplicitous by nature, that they're just out there to scam you or to manipulate you, and here's evidence of it, is being amplified more and more and more as this trial goes on, especially as more evidence comes out. And that's one of the shittiest things, I think, to have to talk about when it comes to this topic. I wanted to hear some other opinions when it comes to that.
Bonjour, my name's Alice, welcome back to my channel. Today I picked a very controversial topic, so I've gotta do a little disclaimer. Despite having studied law for a little bit, I'm a social scientist, so I'm gonna analyze the whole thing as a social scientist, which means that I'm not going to take part in figuring out who's right or wrong, if the decision is fair. As per usual, I'm interested in the why. Why? Second thing I'd like to say as well is that I feel like we forgot that this whole thing was about domestic violence. Now, before we start the video, just a little break to tell you that Squarespace is sponsoring this video.
And that's one of the most important parts, though, that I think that like the seriousness of domestic violence is kind of being lost to give way to meme culture, especially because it's broadly speaking, a lot of this analysis is happening on the internet. So yeah, it looks like she did cocaine in this one moment. It looks like hashtag me poo. Oh, it looks like there's a mega pint of wine, right? And we're talking about some of the most horrifying things that can happen in a relationship.
Always a pleasure to promote their services. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for building your brand, and Instagram if you thought trials should be televised, and the majority of you said no. And those who took time to develop the ideas argued that televised celebrity trials are symptomatic of the US tendency to turn everything into entertainment, even domestic violence. But it's not just a US thing. People all over the world watch the trials on YouTube or other platforms. We are all guilty of it. And all the things related to justice, crimes, prisons have always had a very specific type of popular appeal. In the age of mass incarceration, the world traveled the world named Spike Island, a former fortress and prison located on the southern coast of Ireland, Europe's leading tourist attraction of 2017. Tourists looking for an even more immediate experience can also rent a cell in HIT, house arrest, wow. Sorry for that pronunciation, a former prison turned into a luxury hotel located outside.
I've seen this. You can have like a fine dining experience in prison cells too. It's just like such a striking contrast.
Amsterdam, Netherlands. I find it all very interesting because initially the building of prisons was supposed to move justice and punishment from the public sphere to the private sphere. The first penitentiary was built in Philadelphia in 1829,
this is a really
but
good take.
Before that, punishment was public. Witches were burned, kings and queens were beheaded. It was all very dramatic. The idea was to deter people from committing those crimes by showing them what would happen if they did. But ultimately it had the opposite effect. People started to develop compassion for the culprits whose sanctions were disproportionate. Punishment had to be moved from the public to the private, and that gave birth to the penitentiaries we know today. The history of prisons and the philosophy behind it is absolutely fascinating, so I'll put a few references down below if you're interested, but we gotta move on here. Now there's an unspoken rule in social sciences, that is that when you talk about prisons, you have to talk about Foucault. He got interested in Jeremy Bentham's idea of the panopticon. Bentham was a philosopher of the 18th century, and the panopticon was a type of prison where the guards could see every single cell from one point. On the other hand, inmates couldn't tell if the guards were watching them or not. They were in a state of constant surveillance. Foucault elaborated on the idea of the panopticon, aka Big Brother is watching you, and that concept is now a tool for social scientists who want to analyze anything that is more or less related to the idea of surveillance, state surveillance, etc. As an example, Brody's channel used the concept of the panopticon to describe the structure of TV reality shows, and more specifically Love Island. Abigail from PhilosophyTube used it to talk about the pressure society put on women to look thin, healthy, and put together, and I personally used it in a video called We Created That Girl to show that lifestyle influencers put themselves in a state of constant surveillance that we viewers maintain. In the case of Johnny Depp v. Heard, yes, we could argue that by televising the whole thing, we put them in a state of surveillance, that people are constantly watching them. They don't know who, where, when, but that might have an impact on the way they behave. As an example, some have commented that it felt like Amber Heard was playing a role the whole time. I mean, both are actors, so both can alter the way they present themselves to the world, just to keep that in mind. So yeah, we could use the panopticon, but I want to look at it in a different way. Using a metaphor that I used in my previous video, actually, the fourth wall, breaking the fourth wall, letting someone penetrate your intimacy, sort of legitimized voyeurism. So when I checked Virginia law online regarding televised trials, I read the following thing. The presiding judge shall advise the parties of such coverage in advance of the proceedings and shall allow the parties to object thereto. So correct me if I'm wrong, but both Heard and Depp could have asked the judge to not allow cameras in court, but they didn't. They willingly let people, millions of people, watch the trial, break the fourth wall, and be part of the whole thing, really. Going back to that little poll I did on Instagram, I wanted to share with you some of the arguments of the people who said, yes, trials should be televised. One person said, actually, I think they should, never mind. I think in cases where it's important for the public to keep the court accountable is a case where it should be televised, but a law that turned into reality TV, which shouldn't happen. Someone else said, I chose yes, but not in the sense of trials should be televised.
I didn't know that either, but I think that speaks directly to both of them wanting this to also be a court of public opinion trial, meaning that both their reputations are on the line if we turn this into reality TV.
It is more like, I believe most...
Because there are already two individuals who are constantly surveyed, who are constantly watched. They're like massive celebrities.
Trials, apart from some exceptions, should all be public, so that one, people, whether they are law professionals or not, can know the rule of law and how it is proceeded in reality. Because many documents of law, their length and the language they use are not accessible to non-professionals, and even if someone memorized every law, they can still don't know how, when they are used in different occasions. And second, if someone or some organization suspects that justice has not been done in a case that's not related to themselves, they can have direct evidence to voice for people in the case without going through some tedious and prolonged application process. And if a trial is public, then I guess being televised is unpreventable. So with the first argument, we have something like, we need more accountability, and with the second comment, we have something more in the line of televised, yes, for public good, but not sensationalized. We can actually apply that to the prison tourism we talked about earlier. Yes, it's tourism, and prisons are turned into some form of entertainment, but at the same time, the educational side of it is quite significant. I visited Cork's prison in Ireland last year, and they really made an effort to humanize inmates, with audio documents, with letters. They clearly denounced the conditions in which the inmates were kept. So transparency, accountability, public good / education. The issue is not the fact that it's televised, but more what we do with it. That's my sister's idea, I have to give her credit. Now let's take a look at history. In 1995, one specific case really changed the way people engage with televised trials. O.J. Simpson, former NFL running back, was charged with 2 counts of murder for the homicide of his ex-wife and her friend. The trial lasted more than 8 months and was punctuated with movie-like twists and turns, like the infamous gloves moment, where he tried on the gloves found on the crime scene that clearly didn't fit. 150 million people watched TV, the live broadcast, as the verdict was announced. Seeing the popular appeal of that dramatic court case, CBS starting its own show called Judge Judy, a sensationalized version of the televised court cases. Judge Judy became popular for her very opinionated takes, her unquestionable authority, and yeah, she was quite scary, really, and kind of reminds me of Dr. Phil, the conservative psychologist on TV. By that I mean that she uses her authority to completely disrespect the people standing in front of her.
Are we understanding each other? Yes. You're an idiot!
The reason why I'm using those examples is to show you how subjectivity inevitably comes into play when something is televised. It starts with the camera. Where is it pointing at? What is being shown? What type of angle has been chosen? So is it a close angle, intimacy, or something more distant? All these elements make the shot subjective and can have an impact on you and your opinion on the trial or the people involved in it. Keep in mind that the O.J. Simpson trial lasted for 8 months and the Heard v. Depp trial is 5 weeks long. So that's a lot of camera shots, a lot of subjectivity over a long period of time. In the case of Judge Judy, the subjectivity of the camera is completely accepted. It often points at Judy, emphasizing her authority and showing her judgmental mannerisms while defendants try to argue for themselves. I mean, it's reality TV, we all know how it works. Images are part of the narrative. The medium is the message. Let's get political, political. I wanna be political. Let's get political. I'm really sorry about that. The Personal is Political was the title of an essay written by Carol Hanisch in 1969 that marked what we call the second wave of feminism. Feminists wanted to draw attention to the fact that equal rights at work, in public institutions, should extend to the home, where things like childcare, home chores were largely done by women. As the feminist movement grew, more and more attention was drawn to the personal, namely how inequalities emerge and are sustained in the private sphere. Women felt more comfortable sharing their personal stories of harassment at work, at home, knowing that it wasn't just personal, it was political, that there is something in our society society that let some men believe that they can get away with such harmful behavior. We reached a climax in 2017 when 12 women accused Harvey Weinstein of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment. That and the thousands of other accusations that emerged in and outside the film industry popularized the MeToo movement, and also gave rise to a massive backlash from the right-wing uncle at the family barbecue to incel communities online. Women are liars. They want to destroy men's lives, men's career, or that they do it for attention. Personal anecdote here, but a few months ago I heard a man say to me and another female friend that he regularly had discussions with his male friends saying that they didn't feel comfortable when alone in a room with another woman, because you never know what could happen, what could be interpreted as sexual harassment. And I'm really easygoing on these things and always try to understand the other person, where they're coming from, and try to explain them why what they say is very, very wrong. But in that moment, I cannot remain silent, because I thought about all the stories I've heard from female friends and personal stories as well that I always kept secret, and the audacity with which he complained that he felt unsafe when surrounded by women in front of two young women. I'll say it here, out of all allegations of sexual assault, only...
Well, okay, and I'm glad that she's bringing this up. Like, there was so much of that stuff. I remember someone, like Jordan Peterson was obviously one of the forefront of being like, you know, why do women wear lipstick at the workplace? It's because they want to denote sexuality. They're trying to tempt us, oh no. And this idea that I was like, I heard a lot of dudes saying that, like, oh man, you like don't even know what's acceptable to do anymore, you know? Like, if can I not, like, you know, hug a coworker? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, I think you've had a pretty broad idea of what is or not something comfortable that someone else can do. It's just like people haven't been calling it out is more the thing, and that just reinforces a lot of that behavior in society. It's like, oh well, yeah, well, what is it? It's like totally fine if a woman like slaps me on the ass and at the workplace now. Is that supposed to be feminism? It's like, no. I mean, that needs to be called out too. I think it needs to be acknowledged that it's not funny, tee-hee, when a woman does it, because like obviously all men are desiring sexual advances 24/7. Like if there is a new paradigm where men are finally acknowledging that a lot of this behavior that was just considered commonplace, especially in the workplace, are forms of either harassment or assault or abuse, then yes, absolutely, in the opposite direction, it's something that has to be done, you know? Lance King of the Stamina Game. Like, it's just, the reason I avoided this for so long is because I like genuinely don't really care about the lives of super rich millionaire celebrities, you know, who are both worth like $300 million, and they're, let's turn our, like, you know, abuse into a public spectacle shit. Like, I'm like, okay. And then people who were like, oh man, I didn't get any work done today. I spent the last 6 hours watching the Amber Heard trial. I'm like, but why? You're gonna see the highlights, you're gonna see the moment, there's gonna be like you'll see the mega chalice scene and the poo scene and the was that cocaine question mark scene. Like you're gonna see it at some point or another. So yeah, we're just finishing this critique that's actually been looking at it from a really neat lens, one that I don't think anyone else has done, in that there is this thing where we turn and monetize horrendous stuff such as being in prison into entertainment. There are prisons that used to be horrifying places where people would get tortured that are now hotels where you can have a fine dining experience in a prison cell. And something like domestic abuse or sexual assault or any of that kind of stuff typically would be the stuff that would be done in private. And now it is a premium form of reality TV. Murder is a premium form of reality TV. And she brings up the OJ trial as like another example of that. Same Lance, I could not care less about the trial and how it's cultural war fodder, and I'm just mad. And it's also a distraction, right? Like, how many hours has the media been dominated by this shit rather than talking about Ukraine, rather than talking about COVID, rather than talking about, the fucking gross inequalities created under capitalism? Why is that not a topic that is at the forefront? Fucking climate change, probably the biggest existential threat to humanity, climate change. But if I was to ask someone, have you read the last IPCC report versus have you read a transcript and or watched footage from the latest, happenings in the Amber Heard trial, it's going to be the second one. You know, it's going to be like, well, I've watched about 10 hours of the Amber Heard trial, but what is the IPCC?
2 to 10% are false. On the other hand, 81% of women reported experiencing some form of sexual harassment and or assault in their lifetime. So at first glance, it seems that the Heard v. Depp trial fits into the MeToo movement. It ticks all the boxes, but there's one thing that makes it very controversial, especially on the left, and it's the fact that by accepting that Heard is lying or that she's turning things to her advantage, we serve the women are liars trope. The trial and its popularity are seen by some as a revenge on MeToo, especially in alt-right and conservatives communities, and progressive people don't want to play into that. What's clear though, and connects to what we talked about at the beginning of the video, is that that the fact that it's televised and that we can comment on it through social media brings us back to when punishment was public, and Heard is really feeling it at the moment. The MeToo movement rightly showed that the justice system isn't always on women's side, and therefore participates in perpetuating rape culture. What most people get from it is that the justice system doesn't work. It doesn't align with how society progresses. The relationship between the justice system and the people, so democracy, has always been a love-hate relationship. As an example, gay marriage was ensured by the Obergefell v. Hodge US Supreme Court decision. By doing that, the justice system normalized gay marriage, which already had people's support. It was a form of reassurance that the US were a functioning democracy. On the other hand, the potential removal of Roe v. Wade, despite public support for abortion, goes in the opposite direction, prompting individuals to be vocal about it, to talk about it online, and to protest. Media, TV, social media tend to give the appearance of democracy because it feels like every single person's opinion matters. And while some of it is true, we have to constantly remind ourselves that our public institutions are very opaque and actually very rarely run according to public opinion, as this study from Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page shows. The more average you are, the less impact your opinions will have on the adoption of the policies you want. The Heard v. Depp trial reveals how justice, what is right or what is wrong, really galvanized people all over the world. And that energy, that need for justice, is very precious, and its potential is huge if we decide to channel it in the right direction. That's it for today. Thank you for watching this video.
Yeah, I think that was a really good analysis. We're going to watch Roe next, and that'll be, I think, the end of my coverage on this. But a lot of really key points. Again, one, and, you know, chatters who are bringing this up, very, very important thing. Abuse is something that is often not times discussed because people fear coming out, and that includes men. It needs to be brought up that, you know, men, especially in you know, patriarchy, fucking sucks for men as well, feel afraid about coming forward about these kind of things, talking about these kind of things, because it feels as if I'm somehow weak, or I'm somehow like not a man because I can't even like stand up to my wife, or I'm not a man because like what man would be sexually abused by a woman at the end of the day? I mean, men always want sex, so that doesn't really make sense. But also the idea of turning the entire thing into a spectacle, done exclusively as a form of entertainment, because both people involved want that, and they want this to become a court of public opinion kind of thing, where they're both going against each other. We're still talking about horrifying abuse between two human beings at the end of the day. This is, and even if it goes in both directions. And yes, if it turns out, and some of the evidence is pointing towards that, that Amber Heard is also an abuser, and that she isn't as innocent as she was when she's coming out and talking about how I'm going to write articles about this, about Me Too, then you play directly into that culture of making people not want to feel comfortable with coming out. It's a very, very negative thing, but that shouldn't be turned around. And this is what the whole worry for me, and this being a Gamergate thing, is like with people like The Quartering, with people like Geeks and Gamers coming out and being like, we told you all along, the whole thing was a lie, all right? Women be liars, god damn it. And if you just look at the raw data of that, that is not the case. This could very well be a case of one of those, you know, between 5 to 10% of cases at the most sometimes are falsified or exaggerated. But even if this is one of those examples, that doesn't then give everyone permission to be like, oh, well then all women be lying, you know? And then turn it as a way to justify continued abuse of women.
They've been around since Adam first told Eve to trust Luna because he was going to buy the dick. On the internet, they're a bit feistier. I've been told to waltz off this mortal coil because I said that my outfit is better than Harry Styles, and I've withheld telling others to futsal shuffle off this mortal coil because they tell me they don't enjoy Whole Lotta Red. Are you insane? Have you listened to New Tank? He says Lamborghini outside that's purple like lean.
Okay, hold up. Oh, we're missing all of those jokes. Wow, just like that. Look at you, helping this old boomer. Alice, is it Capel or Chappelle? Alice Capel, really good channel, really good analysis. Go support it. Here's the linkies in the chats. You now have the power.
Shakespeare was a fucking hack. But sometimes arguments are serious. Like when I had to argue with my mother that I'd choose Zero Suit Samus in Smash Bros. Because of her fierce womanly spirit and chic wedges. But really, the world is a scary, scary place right now. I go to bed every night knowing that I won't hit 100K unless I upload another video. That feels worse to me than, I don't know, poverty. Sometimes I do want to make the world a better place though, which leads us to today's sponsor. You know, I often feel bad about the many times I've poured barrels of oil into the Pacific planet in their name. It's very few quips and will generally be unflinchingly unfun.
This is sponsored by Ro, so go check out Ro Ramden's channel. It's
this is
funny.
Because I'm going to be discussing assault, abuse, and harassment, so trigger warning for all of those. I won't get too graphic, but yeah, let's get into it. The Me Too movement is something that has felt like an obvious, steadfast response to patriarchal abuse for years now, but in reality, it has only been around for those few years. Its prominence and power depends on the people's ability to defend the movement itself and the victims it elevates. As self-evident as the truths revealed by it are now, they were not always as evident to billions of people, myself being one of them. Early in my sophomore year of high school, nearly 4.5 years ago now, I wasn't fully aware of how pervasive harassment and abuse of power was. I was still a progressive person at this point in my life. I considered myself a feminist. There was just a massive blind spot in my education, not necessarily by fault of my own. I still remember the day I started seeing my closest friends post their stories of harassment and assault on social media. I was incredibly destabilized and fully aware that whatever my understanding of the situation was, it could not fully understand the pain of actually experiencing these things. This period in popular culture brought many people, my younger self included, into a broader understanding of what constitutes abuse of power, what constitutes sexual harassment, and what constitutes violation. It also shifted their priorities from wringing their hands over the possibility of a statistically improbable false accusation to the elevation and protection of victims of abuse. Had this movement not happened, had I not known what my friends, loved ones, and family had experienced, I would have a wholly insufficient understanding of the world I live in and the powers that be within it. Before movements like this, there were many more people with wholly insufficient understandings of the world they live in. If this movement were to be stopped dead in its tracks or set back, there would be many more people with wholly insufficient understandings of the world they live in. Drawing attention to these injustices keeps people informed, conscious, and most importantly, safe. This attention has also, of course, made for a considerable backlash. There are millions of people, especially less progressive cis men, who have been pushed further into reactionary politics in regards to abuse and assault by this movement. This is not to say that it has not been worth it, though. The exact opposite, actually. When morally deplorable people fight you for asserting what is just, it is quite possible that what you've postulated is a threat to their continued dominance. However, this has resulted in a burgeoning societal undercurrent of people who see the continued calling out of large figures and assume a variety of unsubstantiated things. That victims are lying, that they're doing it for petty revenge, that they're doing it for attention and their 15 minutes of fame, that they're psychotic basket cases, aiming their irrational emotions and interpretations of reality at whatever beloved person they can to feed some invisible, untestable, core egomaniacal quota they have for their own self-importance. Of course, this would be incredibly, incredibly unlikely. People like this are anomalous. What is more likely is that they are telling the truth. What is even more likely than that is that the truth is uncomfortable, not fully knowable, and nuanced to an extent that the average onlooker is reluctant to fully understand, or sometimes even incapable of understanding. Present-day discussions of abuse and assault are often tainted by the invisible hand of cancel culture discourse, laissez-faire accountability, or something. The general throughline of a cancel culture talking point is to posit that the danger of disproportionate punishment is worse than the danger of having a possible active abuser being given power and prominence. I think this can be a legitimate concern. There are instances of celebrities or influencers having their careers destroyed by what would be small blips if they were to be better liked by the people holding their feet to the flames. However, the amount of figures who have fallen to circumstances like this pales in comparison to the amount of rotten, abusive, manipulative figures who have been allowed to propagate the idea of their innocence to a core base of rabid supporters and fence-sitters who don't want to consider the misdeeds that could be perpetrated by those in power. Christine Blasey Ford testified for days in front of Congress, but Brett Kavanaugh has enjoyed 3.5 years as a Supreme Court justice, made all the more famous by the accusations levied against him. I lead into all of this to tell you all something that is surprisingly, or at least surprisingly to me, controversial. People are treating the testimonies and experiences of Amber Heard horribly. Let's review. Amber Heard has admitted to hurting Johnny Depp. Full stop. She admits to hitting him, to pelting him with things, and then she downplayed that she did that. In a recording, she said, "I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched. And I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you." This is definitely an instance of physical harm, and she also might have a history of domestic abuse separate of Depp, according to an old police report, but she might contest that. So when I tell you that in spite of the admission of physically hitting Depp, bad thing to do, that people are treating her horribly in a way that should stop, I need you all to understand that I am not calling Heard an ontologically good person or a person whose actions inherently necessitate defense and should not be analyzed. What I need you to understand is that you cannot armchair psychologist her claims into the ether. Her accusations still stand. If you've been on social media, you may not even know her claims, right? You may not know the multiple instances of violent sexual assault she has claimed to experience at the hands of Depp. You may not know that her team has showed photos of her bruised, literal photographic evidence of injuries sustained. You may not know that he painted messages to her in his blood.
Well, yeah, but the pushback against that now is everyone's saying this is all like a Gone Girl scenario. They're like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, we've all seen that movie. We know what women are capable of based on that movie, so come on.
blood on their wall and said he hoped her corpse was rotting in the back of a car. You may not know about texts from nearly a decade ago where he talks about drowning her. What you probably do know is that Johnny is a martyr. Hollywood's golden boy that unfortunately has experienced massive losses at the hands of this woman. That 4 million people have signed a Change.org petition to have this woman removed from Aquaman 2. Did you know that the most signatures on a Change.org petition for rejection of Brett Kavanaugh from the Supreme Court is 150,000? Whatever has happened with Depp and Heard has galvanized millions to unite against this woman, or this figure of this woman painted by social media. This liar, doing it for petty revenge, doing it for attention, this psychotic basket case, aiming her irrational emotions and interpretations of reality at whatever beloved person she can to feed some invisible, untestable, core egomaniacal quota she has for her own self-importance. Is it okay to call...
And while everyone is jumping on the bandwagon, it makes the whole situation infinitely worse. If Amber Heard is an abuser and, you know, both of them were committing abuse against each other, then yeah, the analysis of that should be that these, again, just sound like horrible celebrities. Like, at the end, they both sound like very toxic people who should not have been in a relationship with each other, who were both abusing her. And at the same time, this whole thing has blown into a situation where people online are now using it as a "I told you so." I told you. I told you women lie about this. I told you women. Like, what's more important is that women can be abusers. There are relationships in which men are in abusive relationships and they don't speak out about it because, again, we have this weird, terrible, patriarchal, toxic masculinity-like culture in which men are supposed to be strong at all times, and there's just no situation in which a man could possibly be hit by a woman. You're totally fine. Suck it up, buttercup kind of situation. As well as this doesn't invalidate the overwhelming statistical probability that if someone is coming out and talking about abuse, they were most likely abused, and furthering that culture of why do people feel unsafe to report these kind of things? Why do women feel unsafe overwhelmingly to talk about this kind of stuff? Because what's going to happen? What's the backlash going to be? And even men too. I mean, the same thing. If a man is being abused and they're worried that the backlash is going to be like, well, just because you're not a man, well then, goddamn, we're directly contributing to this terrible situation in which it really protects abusers. The whole thing is set up to protect people who are going to commit domestic violence.
All these things mutual abuse. Maybe Depp was a monster and Heard was a monster at the same level. Well, that would ignore that Depp is 20 years older and millions richer than Heard. That with the cultural landscape of abuse allegations, Heard has more to lose than to gain by coming forward with this. Abuse usually implies a power imbalance. But what is more important than digging into the harm inflicted by either party in this situation, though, is being a regular fucking person about it. Wow. The amount of fanatic posturing about this situation is unreal. Look at the amount of content, memes, compilation videos about this trial and this very real situation, turning it all into some sort of entertainment snowball to roll down a hill. This is fucking disgusting and deplorable, and if you've participated in all of this stuff, I need you to examine very, very closely why you think that is okay. I'm gonna tell you right now, you don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what happened. You watching Twitch streamers react to a trial is not you knowing what happened. You laughing at Amber
Whoa, I feel called out here.
Heard crying while recounting her assault is not you knowing what happened. You clipping Johnny Depp and dropping him into your epic Depp giggles compilation is not knowing what happened. Regardless of if you deeply, deeply believe Depp has done nothing wrong, you do not know what happened. The observation of this trial and these people with a magnifying glass so that they can be flipped into memes is sickening, it is delusional, and it is, yes, harmful to women who want to come forward about abuse, regardless of whether Heard is somehow completely lying. Treating victims and perpetrators like protagonists in a movie is unbelievable, and every single time I think that
Thank you. Turning this whole thing into a TV show or a drama or a movie where everyone picks their teams and their sides, and it's like, oh yeah, we're Team Depp, we're Team Heard, like goddamn.
Internet can do a bit better, I am proven wrong. If you are someone who has taken the time out of their day to make a meme about how Depp is this epic bacon Jack Sparrow hero and Amber Heard is a poisonous sea witch, I need you to do something for me. Really seriously, I need you to do something for me, and it's going to come with a few admissions from me. 1, I can't know exactly what happens. I am incapable of being in that room with that couple. 2, I don't expect you to like me for what I've said about your behavior. And 3, I know it is scary to cope with the idea that the actions you believe to be just can impact society negatively, regardless of whether what you believe to be true is actually true. I need you to think and examine very deeply why you are so eager to believe Johnny and destroy Amber in this situation. Is it because Johnny is such a cultural icon? Is it because you think Amber is attention crazed? Is it because you genuinely believe Johnny has done zero wrong? And most importantly, out of any question you can ask yourself, is there any part of you that is sick of the way that media has been treating men? Have you seen your favorite actors, singers, and artists fall one by one to assault allegations? Is this situation in any way you reflexively taking pent-up anger you have towards women, making legitimate accusations, and flinging it at a woman you can finally prove has done wrong in return? And do you believe launching that anger into the public consciousness in a very visible way will make the world better for victims? I promise you, engaging with a situation like this critically and consciously is healthier for you and the world, and it is remarkably possible to do. You may want to say that I've defended her, but have I really? I have put her claims next to Johnny's, elevated them to a similar level, and reminded people that they too exist. If we continue to treat public instances of abuse like this with heavy-handed memification, soon enough we will decimate much of the work we have done to take accusations seriously and solemnly. It is worth it to self-examine to see if the things we say, do, and participate in are going to make the world a better place. Thank you for listening. Once again, thank you to Ren for sponsoring this video. Offset your carbon footprint.
Everyone, please go give the likes up and the thumbs and the majority of Ro Ramden's content, by the way, is like absolutely hilarious. It's just like fast and furious burns on the baddies. So this was a much more subtle, nuanced take on the whole thing. But like, yeah, I completely agree. That's just someone saying, making it way more eloquent what I've been thinking about this whole thing, especially since it's blown up. Because yeah, the MRA crowd is just having a hell of a time. They feel vindicated in every way. Every single moment of MeToo that they felt was just going too far is now suddenly like, we told you, the whole thing was a mess, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if we're going to start seeing free Weinstein posters soon or something like that, but goddamn.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.